we're going to go through like the change. There we go. The change in pricing workflows in part 3. So I recognize a lot of you I may have already spoken to or someone at your company, but if I haven't, it's nice to meet you. I'm one of the co-founders at Part 3. I have a background. I worked for a general contractor for 6 years and then switched to working for architects for about 5 years as well. So definitely understand all the pain points that you have on a project and really trying to approach it from my own experience, but also from your experience when you guys give us feedback. And this is other Jess at Part 3. So we're both part of the CX team and we make it really easy for you to only remember one name. So while we're going through this today and everything, you can just drop any questions that you have in the chat and Jess will go through that and then we'll leave some time at the end to answer those as well. So to get started then, today I just want to go through like overall the change flow, but Part 3 has a lot of different naming conventions as well that don't necessarily match what you call things in the industry. A lot of things are named differently, but they all serve the same function. So I'll go through that and then we'll go through the process of actually creating a change, the pricing review, and then what that looks like as an official form of a document. So again, just pulling you all the way through Part 3 and kind of the way that we intended for the change flow to go. So some of the benefits, obviously, this is very biased in my opinion, but we're trying to make this as collaborative and efficient as possible. So in my old world, it was Excel and Word files and PDFing them and sending them out. It's just a nightmare. So we're bringing all that together, automating whatever we can for you and bringing the whole team together. So really letting you guys work together in Part 3. Obviously, changes involve a lot of different people. So it's like, where can we centralize all the information? And then it is also that source of truth for you and the entire project team, right? Like you create a change, you send it out. There's no reason that someone on site couldn't have access to that change the minute that you send it out. So everyone can come into Part 3, view changes that have been issued. And so it's really just that source of truth and more benefits as well. We'll dive into those and hopefully you see some along the way. So the first thing that I mentioned was Part 3's naming conventions. So we had to kind of establish terms, right? Like we call it a proposed change, which is basically a document created and issued by the consultant team that includes attachments or drawings. And so you might call this something else. Again, like every project is different, owners have different requests, and your own company might have its own different naming conventions. So you might call this a PR or a CCN. So whenever I'm going through this today, like in my example project, I have it called a proposal request. So just keep your head wrapped around that idea that we call it proposed change. You can call it anything you want. A change directive, I think that's pretty well known in the industry, is just you're issuing this change document, go do the work immediately. I don't need to give you a quote or a change order before you do the work. And then a change order, again, not everyone will use this type of document. Like this is the final impact to the contract value. It really depends on your scope on the project. Are you even in charge of the finances? Is it part of your responsibility? Are you only doing submittals, RFIs? So everything that you have in Part 3 is optional. You don't have to use it, but the change order is one of those ones where it's, some people use it, some people don't. And so I'll still cover how that works today. Pricing, again, we call it pricing. Quotation, request for a change order, any of these little things that come in where it either requires money and the consultant team saying, hey, we know this will cost more money, or the GC is coming in and saying, hey, we want some more money. So either way, it's that review of, these quotes or financial documents, whether or not they're fair and reasonable according to the consultant team. So when I talk about pricing and quotes, that's what I'm referring to. And then budgets are an allowance or a contingency. So I'll cover those quickly today. Just as a heads up, I'm not going to go into certificates today because that is like a bit of a rabbit hole. So I'm going to keep everything at this change flow level. And I think the next webinar or one of them will be on the certificate workflow. So that brings me to demo time. So I'm going to go into one of my projects here that is a bit more bare bones. This is a new project that I have. So the first thing that we know when you create your projects in part 3 is that you have your settings where you've entered the original contract value. So now part 3 knows your starting point of your contract. So any pricing or anything like that that you have on your project, this is the point that we'll pick up from. And then on the Teams page, we know that you already have, if you're the company that bought part 3 and this is your subscription, you know that you have the opportunity to put in your disclaimers and your naming conventions and everything like that. So at your Teams level or at your organizational level, you have these cover pages. And this is where you see all those terms that I just went over. So again, proposed change. On my project, I decided I wanted to call it a proposal request. So I've changed my display names and my IDs, and I have my disclaimers. So you as the prime consultant and the person that bought part 3, you can control all this to reflect what your company says, but so can your consultants. So your consultants at the team level, for them, they still have this edit cover page option. So bringing them into part 3 doesn't mean that they're going to lose all of their, legal disclaimers, their naming conventions, their logos, their colors. They have that same opportunity to leverage everything in part 3 that you do. So it's one of the ways that you can kind of explain to your consultant team the benefit for them to come in and everyone collaborate on these changes together, is that they still have control of that. They're not losing everything and just being forced to use your language and everything like that. So this team level edit cover pages is where you decide your own naming conventions for what works for you and on your project. So I'll go over to the logs page now, and now we'll really dive into the creation of the change and what that flow looks like in part 3. So I'm on my change here. I've called it a proposal request, a change directive, and a change order. So everything here on part 3 is created in the top right corner. So I'm going to make a new proposal request here. And this is automatically number 2 because I already have issued one of them. So I'll enter a title here. And then the reason for the change, we have these preset reasons in part 3. You can override those at your settings level and decide, some people don't like using coordination because that's kind of like a get out of jail free card. But you can use whatever reasons you want. So for this one, I'll just say it's an owner request. I'm addressing it to the general contractor. We know who the general contractor is based on your Teams page. So that's usually who it's addressed to. And then now I'm just putting the description of the change. So I'll say, and now I'm going to pick what consultants are involved. So I already have my disclaimer here because I set that up at the Teams page. And now I'm going to pick electrical. This is impacting my electrical consultant. So I'm going to let them know, and then I'm going to hit create. So now I've selected the change. I know that I'm the one that did it. And now I'll select electrical. I want them to be the person that's on this project here. So this is my cover page. This is what part 3 is generating for you. And this is what I talk about, where we're trying to take away all of that manual tasks that you would normally do in Word and Excel. We're giving you that cover page. We have, your disclaimer up here, the title, your description. And really now this is more of a building blocks approach for you. So now all you need to do is add your drawings or add your attachments. And that's really the sequence of what needs to happen. So I'll add my drawing here. I'll enter my drawing number, the date of the revision, which again is normally something that's on the drawings anyways. And then a description of my change. If I wanted to attach one big combined PDF, I could do that as well. And then you just keep clicking add another reference. So if you have in one combined PDF, like 8 drawings, you can pull them out separately. You can combine them as one description. You can do whatever you want to do. So now I've pulled in that attachment. It's listed on my cover page. I can see the drawing that I pulled in down here. I have all the same annotation tools if you wanted to bubble something or highlight it, if you forgot to do it in the program that you built the drawing in or pulled it from. So this is how you as the prime consultant are kind of building your change. You're adding your attachments, your drawings, we're populating everything on the cover page for you. If this relates to another document, you can add that. So maybe this originated from an RFI. I want to reference that RFI on the change. So you're just kind of, obviously that one doesn't make sense, but you're just connecting the breadcrumbs in part 3 of like, how did this change come to be? And then, so like I mentioned, your consultants can come in here and do the same thing. They can add their drawings, add their attachments. They'll see this customized cover pages, go in and put their own disclaimers and everything like that. So they can definitely leverage part 3. However, we don't want to force your consultants to work in a way that they didn't decide to work in, right? So we're trying to give you that flexibility. So what you can do in that case is, let's say Monica comes in and she sees that she has this change associated with her. She doesn't want to build this in part 3. Her company has her own standards. She's got her own way of working. Cool. We don't want to make that any different for her, make her life harder. So she can override this and use her own external cover page, and she can put her own naming. So maybe in her company, they call it an electrical proposed change. So I'm going to update that. And now I can see there's no cover page here, just going to add the attachment. And you as the prime consultant can add the attachment. She can come in and just upload the attachment. And then now we have the whole piece of the puzzle here. So you're building everything out. I can still see that I had electrical involved on this change. So it is good to call them out separately, but just keep in mind, you don't need to have them use the cover page. You can just upload it for them. We have this approve and needs work, and those are only internal like comments. Those won't show up on anything. Approve means like, hey, Monica, looks good. You captured this, or it needs work. You know, missing pot lights in the corridor, whatever, I can send that. And then now Monica knows to come back in. It's in the history. I sent some comments. And then if she comes in and revises it, I'm like, yep, that looks good. No problem. Another thing to remember here is that we do have this comments area, pardon me, where you can coordinate with your consultant team. Only consultants can see this. This is consistent across all the documents in part 3, but it's really helpful when you're building out a change, especially when it's a really complex change. You can, like, I understand from my own experience how much back and forth there is just to try and get a change out the door. So you can mention each other. If I want to say, hey, Christy, here's the plan, or do you have the cut sheet for the latest, you know, fixture type, anything like that. If you mention someone, they'll get an email. And again, you're just keeping everything at the document level. And you come back like 4 months later, the light fixtures are being installed. What was the discussion we had? Maybe why did we make that decision? So this is all about building out your actual change document with your cover page, your drawings or attachments. When you're ready, you can sign it. So I'm happy with this change. I'm going to sign it. Perhaps I need someone to review it. So as a reviewer, maybe I can issue a proposal request on my own. Maybe I don't need anyone to review that. Maybe I need the owner to sign off on that first. So I'm going to add other Jess as the owner here. She'll get a task to come in and review this document. So if I send this for review, you have a few options. I can continue, and then Jess can come in to part 3, review the task. When the owner comes into part 3, or anyone with that sign-in authority, the task just lives at their overview page. So now if I view Jess's tasks, I can see that she'll have this task here to review. So she's gonna come in and contribute to that. So that's an option that you have. If you have an owner or someone that really likes PDF hard copies, or they want to sign in their own program, you can create a PDF as well. So now let's say theoretically Jess has signed this. I'm ready to go. If I'm missing a signature, it'll let you know, but you could add a note and maybe say like, Jess gave me the sign off on this via email or something like that. And then we're going to give you that one last review. This is who it's going to, everything like that. And now I'm ready to issue the change. So now, again, part 3 views this as you've created a change. You're sending out something to the world, to your contracting team, to say, hey, this is something we want to do, but we'd like to know how much it's going to cost before you go ahead with it. So now we have this orange price it button. And in this entire change flow, we're always going to use this orange button to try and like lead you down the path that we want you to go, like with the flow that we built. So when your general contractor has completed their quote, they've gone and got, you know, drywall, electrical, all these different quotes together, and they're submitting it, they can come into part 3 and click this orange price it button, or you can do it on their behalf. So all you're going to do is click price it. I know that it's quote number 4. Again, this is auto-populated for me because I already have some other quotes in this project. So I'll say this is level 2 RCP revisions. I'm not going to give a description because I'm creating it from this change. So I know this is my initiating document, so I don't need to go through and give a description. And then once you're in this quote, all you need to do is click add. And this is really the most important step. You're just going to add, I'll just pull something from a document I already have. You're going to add the PDF. Normally, you'll receive a quotation in PDF format. If it's an email, you can just PDF the email. We just need some sort of attachment in here because obviously with any quote, you want backup. Someone can't just ask for $10,000 and you're like, yep, that sounds great. So this is an area where you can upload that backup. So I'll say here, maybe I have some drywall revisions that I need here, and that is, $1,000. And now maybe I have fixtures that are being updated, and this is electrical, and this is $5,000. So you'll see that we have a few different line items here. You can break this quote out as much or as little as you want. If you just wanted to call this proposed change number 2 and leave it as one lump sum value, you can definitely do that. The reason that we let you break this out as much or as little as you want is so that you can pick where you want this money to come from. So for example, these two I have as a straight contract overage, but maybe I want to pull this from a contingency or an allowance. So as soon as you hit that drop down, you're going to see the different budgets that you have available. I'll show you where those budgets live, but it's basically any allowance or a contingency that you have on your project that you can pull money from. So I'll say that I'm going to take this fixtures from an allowance. As soon as you pick something that's outside of the contract overage, you get this budget impact screen at the bottom. So we're going to tell you, you had 70K and now you're taking 5K from that, and now you have 65K. So we're letting you know along the way how much money you have left to draw down from that. So I'll hit save now. And this pricing flow should mimic what this would look like in the outside world. And that's how we tried to build it. So for example, I received a quote as an architect and it had some electrical items in it. So I'm going to request review from my electrical consultant. And so now I'm asking Monica to come in and review this. They got an email notification, and now we both have the opportunity to look at this quote, chat with each other, whether or not we think that it's acceptable or if it's missing something. And then we get to leave our status as well. So I'll say fair and reasonable. That looks like a good fair value, $1,000 to patch and repair some drywall or whatever the change was. Monica, when she comes in, she'll have this option as well, only as electrical to respond to hers. Obviously, you as the prime consultant, you have total control, so you could respond on their behalf if they don't come into part 3, if it's an email or anything like that, and then they can pick their status. So not reviewed, maybe it didn't pertain to them and they're like, I don't need to touch this. Fair and reasonable or rejected. So let's say this one is rejected. I'll just say wrong fixture type, and I'll submit that review. You'll see that I can't accept it anymore, and that's because something has been rejected. So we just make the assumption really that if you're not happy with it, we're not going to let you move forward with it. And then so we're going to go through this request revision. So I'm going to let the general contractor know and anyone else know that these are my comments, this is the wrong fixture, and I want them to revise the pricing. And then I'll request that revision. So again, you're keeping everything in part 3. Just as you would a change, creating revisions, we want you to track the whole history of your pricing flow and the entire change flow in part 3. That way, you have where this started at 10 grand, it went down to 9 grand. You as the prime, that looks great to your owner. You're doing your due diligence to make sure that they're getting the best price and you're reviewing their quote and you're being thorough. So keeping everything in part 3, you have a really good history of where everything stands. You don't need to go through all of your emails 8 months later when someone's installing this light fixture and trying to figure out what happened and why it's that fixture. So then it can get revised by the general contractor or you. So you would just come in, edit this, go through that flow again, and request a review. So let's say this time it looks good. Everybody's happy with it. We're going to move forward. Now I can accept it. So this is one last note for you. This is the reason. You can add any acceptance notes as if you want to do that. And we're giving you that budget breakdown again. So the total is $6,000, but I'm taking $5,000 from an allowance. So really, I'm only adding $1,000 to the contract. So we're going to pull in this math for you along the way, so you don't need to do it. And then you can decide who you want to let know. So maybe I want to give Jess a heads up. Hey, we reviewed this quote. Probably a change order is going to be coming for that shortly. So now I'll accept that pricing. You can see if I go back to the logs for a second, I just want to go over a few different icons here. So you'll see that this one has a locked icon. It's because it's already been issued on a change order. So we won't let you double dip from that pot of money. So once you've issued it and you've put that $7,500 on a change order, that's it. You don't get to come back and accidentally put it on another one. Orange is because it's in revision. I didn't like the price that they submitted. You know, they didn't give me the backup that I needed, whatever. And then these green ones are accepted. So that is like an overview of the different icons that you're going to see on this page, just in case you're wondering what they mean. When I talked about the different budgets that you can pull from, all of that lives here at the settings level. If you go to project budget, this is where you can add an allowance or a contingency. So at the beginning of your project, this is the best time to do it. Right off the bat, you know your starting contract value, you know if you have contingencies or allowances to pull from. So start adding those here and make sure you give it a name and a starting balance, and then decide if it's an allowance or a contingency. So a contingency is outside of the contract price. So we will always tell you, like, give you this little yellow pop-up. Contingencies outside of the contract price, so it will increase the contract. An allowance is within the contract price. So you'll be pulling money from that contract, but when you issue a change order, you won't see the contract increase because it's within it. So I just like to highlight that. Seems like common sense, but we have like the big yellow. Please read this so that you understand. So now that I have this quote accepted, the next thing I need to do is follow the orange button path. So I'm going to create my change order. And on this project, in this contract, I issue change orders. I want to actually have that final document that impacts the contract. And so again, not everyone is like this. Maybe you just review quotes and that's where it gets left off. It really just depends what your scope is on your project, you as the prime or you as not the prime. So we'll try and give you that option to upload things or create documents in a way that makes sense for you and be flexible. But what I'm covering today is like the intended workflow that we normally see for people. So this is change order 2. It populated to number 2 because that's the next number that I have. And again, I'll call this level 2 RCP. I know the reason for the change. I'm not going to put a description now. And theoretically, the consultants have done their job, right? At the quote review level, they did everything that they needed to do. So I'm not going to select them here. I don't need to assign them with anything. They're good. So now because I followed that orange button, I know that this is a quote associated with that document. And I know that the initiating document was my proposal request number 2. So if I scroll down here, I'm going to see my quote that I attached for $6,000. I'm going to see that I have $1,000 going into the contract overage, pulling $5,000 from my budget. If you don't want to share that remaining budget allowance or balance, you can just toggle that off. So for example, that's probably useful if it's a contingency. Maybe you don't want to let them know how much money you have left in this money or in this pot of money outside of the contract. So you can toggle that on or off. And then we're just doing the math for you. So original contract, adding 1,000, previous changes plus this one, this is your new contract value. You can also add any days. So if this impacted your schedule and it added 2 days, I can update that. So we'll add 2 days to the project schedule. This is the revised project end date. So now, same thing, I'm going to sign it. I'm happy with that. I reviewed the quote. I think it's fair. I can see the quote attachment here. I can see the initiating document here. And you have all the links down here as well if you want to come in and click around, and it's handy later when you come in as well. And then the next thing, same as before, you can add your reviewers. So maybe for this one, I do need the owner to sign it. So I'm going to send it out. So I'm going to send it for review. And that will go to Jess again. they'll have the ability to come in and say whether they think it's fair or not. If they're not happy with it, they get like an orange box to let them know, or to let you know their comments and everything like that, if they think it needs to be revised. And then you can issue it. So I'm happy with that. The owner signed it, all good. And I'm going to issue it. Let's say maybe the owner signed it outside of Part 3. They wanted to sign it, like, give me a nice old-fashioned hand signature. I can add the final document here. So if I add a final document here, maybe this is something, I'll just attach this for now, and I'll save it. I'll get this banner at the top to say like, hey, there's a final document attached. So anything signed out of Part 3, you can still log it in here as your final version. And then anyone who comes in here will just know, like, this is the final real one that I should be looking at. And then as well, if I go back here on my change page, now I can see how everything connected. So I have my original pricing document here. It turned into this change order for this value, and you get to like paint that whole picture along the way. If I go back to my settings and my budget, I can see everything as well, and I can export this at any time. So if you or your owner wants a whole picture of where do our budgets stand right now, you can export that for them in an Excel file, and the logs as well, you can export at any time. So really just following this change flow along the way, hitting those nice orange buttons will help lead you down that path of what we really intended the change flow to be in Part 3. As a general contractor or someone who's outside of the consultant team, just as a FYI for you as a prime, they can only see issued documents. So they won't see things in progress. So for example, if you're working on a big change, they can't log in and be like, oh, something big's coming down the pipe. Like, I know. They can't see anything until it's issued. So you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry that they can see your comments. As a general contractor, the only thing that they can do is come in and upload a quote or submit an RFI. So in that case, if you're one of the people who doesn't issue a document, or maybe your general contractor just wants to submit quotes to say like, hey, I would like some money for this, they can just come in and create a quote without any other document being issued. So that's kind of how you can get your GC to collaborate with you in Part 3 and your consultants as well. One thing I wanted to highlight is obviously we have our nice blue question mark. You can look here for any of our documents on changes, or you can just ask us a question that comes to me, Jess, and our entire team to help you like answer your question, help you navigate, or help you troubleshoot if you need anything. So sending us a message through this blue question mark is really the best way to get in touch with us. It gives us a nice head start to help you out. And then we also have our entire help center. If you need anything from us on that point, you can come in here. We have our change documents area, our pricing and quotes to walk you through that. And we have some videos in there. So hopefully that will be a lot of information to help you really utilize the change flow in Part 3. If you have a project right now and you don't see any of the pricing, when you go to your settings, you can just come down here and toggle on your pricing. And then just so you know, you can't toggle it off if you have change orders associated with it. So if you're wondering why can't I do that, it's because once you have money in, and it stays there. So yeah, feel free to toggle on your pricing workflows. Really excited to see how you guys get going with that. But now I'll hand it over to Jess if we have any questions in the chat that I can answer.
For sure. We've got a question from Jennifer. For contractors using Procore, will Part 3 easily coordinate with Procore? The contractors we work with typically upload their information to Procore for their subs.
So for a Procore connected project in Part 3, we pull in and we can speak to submittals and RFIs only. We don't have an integration via Procore for any other document types. So whether or not you're a Procore connected project or not, this change flow looks exactly the same. So only submittals and RFIs come in and speak between Procore and Part 3, not any quotes or any other document types that they might have.
Awesome. Brian was asking, oh, sorry, was someone about to say something? Oh, okay. Brian was asking if this works the same for change directives.
Yeah, so a change directive, if I created a change directive here, so I'll just do a test one. So the form for a change directive looks a little bit different, only in the sense that you have a few other areas that you can tick off. So when you create and issue a change directive, it acts the same, but it doesn't have that that orange button, because we assume with a change directive, you're just going right to work. The quote comes like quite a bit afterwards because you don't need the change order. So anytime you create a quote here, you can just come back and tie your initiating document to that change order. So you'd be able to come here and add it as the initiating document. So the change directive flow is a little bit different to get you down that path. It mainly follows the orange button route of a PR to a quote to a change order. But you can still tie a quote to a change directive.
I was on mute. We have a follow-up question from Brian, as we've had some issues switching a PCN to a CD and then quoting a CO closeout. And then is there any way to tie a PCN and change directive to the same quote?
Going from that flow, so let's see here. If I, okay. So I might make a video for you, Brian, after, if you don't mind, instead of me trying to like figure this out right now in front of everyone. But I'll make you a little video. Most people on this call probably know I really like to make a Loom video. So I'll make you a little video showing like the PR to CD, putting both of those on a quote, and then going to the change order flow. So I'll follow up with you after that. Jess, can you mark down Brian's last name for me?
Yes. Brian also says thank you.
Is it possible to link more than one quote to a CO?
Yes, definitely. So this is the latest issued change order. So on the latest issued change order, you can reopen it. We only let you reopen the latest one because we don't want all this information to be incorrect if you move backwards, right? So you can have multiple quotes or pricing documents on one change order. So if I go to edit attachments here, all the other ones that are in approved state, I can pull in, but only if they're approved. Then you can pull them in, we'll break them out for you. So you can have as many pricing documents as you want on one change order. We know a lot of times you don't want to have a million change orders. Some owners like it at the end of the month, tell me everything that happens. So yes, you can have as many as you want.
Hey, Jess, quick question. Does this process work also with CCDs, like similar? If I start a CCD that goes into a change order?
Yeah, that's the change directive flow.
Yeah.
And then you quote it and the quote goes to the change order.
So it's basically the same as PR to CO, right? It would just be CCD to PCO to CO.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
This one's
Awesome.
slightly off. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it looks like we're out of questions, but maybe not.
This one's a little bit off topic, but it's related because we were linking drawings in the proposed change, right? When we link drawings, is it on the roadmap? And if so, how close are we to having a centralized drawing management module in Part 3 so that every time you issue a revised drawing in a change, it updates to the master set in P3?
So we're pretty close. We're in the design stages right now. Our team, we have an awesome designer, Amy, and she is working on designs right now for what this like file center is going to look like for everyone in Part 3. So it's something that's our really big focus in Q2. We want you guys to have an area to keep everything. Obviously, you know, a lot of documents start before construction, like your permits, your site plan approval, like everything else. We want you to have one spot to keep it. And then V2 of that will likely look like those drawings. Like you upload a drawing and then we'll be able to keep a master set for you. Obviously, it comes with the caveat that you would have to use the drawing feature on the proposed change, like add a drawing or add an attachment so that we can kind of connect those dots for you when you use that. But yes, that's a big focus for us this quarter. It's something that we know everyone wants and is super valuable. So big push for us.
Thank you.
Anything else, Jess?
We've got another question here. Without the drawing database, what is the difference or benefit of attaching as a drawing versus just an attachment?
The difference there is really just spelling out as like in as much detail as you want. So if here I use the drawing or an attachment, the attachment just gives me the title and the description. So the drawing field is just, it's different fields. Honestly, it's whatever way you want to work. Some people that like some of our customers only want to use the attachment option because that's how they issue most of their changes. Some other people like to spell out specifically the drawing number, title, date of the revision, as you would on like your right hand title block. It's just a preference. Might come into play though if we like once that file sender gets going. That's definitely something that we'll have to keep in mind. Good.
No more questions from the chat. If there's anyone else who wants to get in a question before we end the call, let us know now.
All good? Perfect.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate it. Feel free in that like blue question mark as well, drop in any ideas that you have for a webinar. I want to really make these useful to the people that are using Part3. So if you have any things that you think you need, a deeper dive on or something your consultants have been asking about, just drop it in there. We'll send a follow-up email with this recording so you can share it with anyone on your team that didn't get a chance to join. And then I'll post the next webinar in Part3 to register probably in a few weeks.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
everyone. Have
Thank
a good day.
you.
Bye.
You too. Thanks.